I think that was the real start of the office, because that was when we really had to take a position, you know?
And we're really forced to agree on things.
Yeah, and so we were excited about that in a way in the long run, but that was really hard for us in the beginning.
Hi. Hello.
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 Hello, and welcome to Architecting.
This is a podcast about the lives of architects.
About the people and stories behind the buildings that we see around us and the images that brought them to life.
And with the very international world that we live in,
This show will purposefully be local and narrow,
Only focusing on the Colorado community of designers.
Hi, I'm the host of Architecting, Adam Wagner. I'm a Denver-based architect. I'm married to an architect. I have 2 architecture degrees, and I've worked for a dozen different architecture firms in 3 different countries. But for these last 5 years, I've been rooted in Denver, where I am at Open Studio Architecture, and I teach at the University of Colorado, Denver. I love connecting with other designers and learning from their experiences. Now I'm broadcasting these stories with the goal of creating a stronger local community. So this week is a bit of an interlude, I guess. Architecting is about Colorado designers, and this week we have 2 non-Coloradans on the show. So Nicole McIntosh and Jonathan Louie co-founded Architecture Office and currently teach at Texas A&M's Department of Architecture. So I first came in contact with them when I was the exhibition coordinator at University of Colorado, Denver's College of Architecture and Planning. This was before I started this podcast, and I had the ambitious goal of using the college's exhibitions and galleries as a way to better connect our local design community and connect us to outside firms and ideas. So Jonathan and Nicole have this beautiful exhibition, which we'll talk about later in the interview, called Swissness Applied. It's a real thorough study of traditional Swiss buildings and details, especially as they've been appropriated in the U.S. And then they created a projection of how these forms and details can be morphed and transformed into new projects. So I worked with them to get crates of models and boxes transported here from Yale to our building right before the pandemic hit. So I had this grand vision while I was setting it up of the opening of their exhibition as being a real kind of party for our community, showcasing this work. And of course, none of that has happened, hasn't happened yet. And their in-person lecture was changed to a remote presentation this last week. So because I'd worked with them so long and was never really able to meet, I couldn't help but to invite them on the show and really get a better understanding of their story and their work. So this interview is seen as a continuation of the lecture that Jonathan gave at CU Denver on March 10th. And I encourage everybody to go to CAP's Facebook page and watch a recording of that. So anyways, I'm breaking form here, but this is a really inspiring couple with beautiful work who have a fascinating background. So I hope you enjoy. Also, because of the logistics of having 2 people on an interview for the first time, we spoke over Zoom, not Instagram Live, and we kind of kept saying goodbye, but then a new story would come up. And so I just let it roll. So if you're interested, keep listening after the normal show ending for a bonus clip where they talk about winning the Architecture League prize and kind of their funny interaction with our very own Coloradan, Kevin Hirth. So enjoy. Hey, and normally this is where the interview starts. However, today I'm excited to say that we have a new sponsor. So the goal of this podcast is to better connect and build up the community of Colorado designers. And this obviously is not a new idea, and there's lots of other people out there pushing for the same thing. And to me, one of the best out there spreading the gospel of good design in Colorado is Modern in Denver. Their spring issue is now out and includes some fantastic coverage, especially on the work of Mike Moore and Trace Birds, some super interesting conceptual projects by Clark Thinhouse, whose book I'm reading right now and would strongly recommend, and the photographs and stories of my good friend J.C. Buck, whose also new book, Ice, I would highly recommend. So Modern in Denver has been striving to bring designers together and to bring people to good design for a long time now. And I'm very excited to be working with them on this shared goal. So go out now, go buy a copy of their magazine at your local book stand, subscribe to their weekly email list, and make sure to follow them on Instagram.
Yeah, so we should start together, right?
Yeah, so let's start together. So but I like to start off so I can kind of compare people of just like, what would be your kind of 2-sentence bio? And I'm interested if you can say that for the two of you as a couple.
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question.
No, I mean, I think we're just a Swiss and American architecture office. And I think that's really the kind of thing that we are happiest with about working together, is that we come from two very, very different points of view and education systems. And it's working together, trying to find our own voice. Yeah. I think it's so interesting how, because Jonathan, you grew up in Hawaii, right? And Nicole, you were in Switzerland, but you've ended up in Texas, almost the middle point between those two extremes.
Yeah. And this is definitely another extreme again, for us, for both of us. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Nicole, let's get so yeah, you're Swiss. So let's talk about that. So where did you grow up?
I grew up outside of Zurich, about 10 minutes away, in a suburban neighborhood, in a 5-story small apartment, so very un-American in a way. And I went to school there. I did my internships in New York, but other than that, I was basically there till I moved 7 years ago. So.
So are you Swiss? Like your family's been in Switzerland forever, or what's your kind of family background?
Yes, I'm an only child, which makes it extremely hard for my parents not being in the country, of course. But yeah, my parents, my mom they're both Swiss. My dad has an Italian background, like his grandfather was Italian, and my mom is Swiss, but she lived in South America and South Africa actually for a total of 5 to 6 years, I think, when she was younger. Unfortunately without us, but yeah, she traveled a lot when she was young as well and lived at other places. So.
What did they do? What did your parents do? What did you kind of grow up around?
Yeah, my dad was actually, he's retired now, but he had a really small one employee car garage. So nothing. He studied fine mechanics, so there's definitely we share the love for model building, which I think came apparent when he helped us building some of the original Faller train models for the Swissness Applied exhibition. And my mom was taking care of older people for a long time, and she's retired now too. But not architects.
Yeah. But then when you were deciding between universities, was it just a pretty easy choice to go to ETH? Like, is that kind of, I mean, obviously it's such a great school, and you're pretty close to it. Did you look outside of there or and choose, or did you focus?
It's really funny. I usually don't tell that to people, but so it was clear for me that I would stay in Switzerland because financially it made sense, because I just couldn't imagine working full-time and going to school full-time. And so I was actually enrolled into the anthropology program and sociology program at the University of Zurich. And then a friend at that time, but I went to maybe to say that I went to an art high school, which was half Italian, half Swiss, and so I was very interested in graphics and especially in the more artistic classes. And so the last day I was able to actually choose what I would study. A friend of mine said, "Why would you go and study something else than architecture or any other art program?" And I don't know. There's the ETH in Switzerland, at least when I went to high school, was always this place where I was like, oh my God, I can't go there. Everyone is so ambitious. It's such a competitive environment. And I don't know, I don't know. I like to paint. I like to be artistic, but other than that, I don't see myself in architecture. And so I decided to actually go just for a few weeks to check it out, and then take a gap year. And for some reason, I ended up in a studio class that was just incredible. My first year studio classes were just amazing, and so I had a really hard time otherwise, because there are a lot of exams and they filter people out, and it was fairly competitive. But I just really kind of got encouraged by my professor at that point to continue studying architecture, and that's how I kind of never left. And then at the ETH you have to have a year of experience somewhere, so you need to do an internship. And I had the option to either go to New York City or to Shanghai, and I decided New York City. And so my experience being abroad was more from my internship time than actually school. And so when I actually got back from my internship, I just decided to do my master's there as well, because it was easy enough to stay with my parents and just go on my breaks to New York to do internships. So that was really what it was.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like I'm interested with the ETH. It's like a mystery in my head, sort of like it's like this thing that I see like glowing that I don't really know how it works. So what's the kind of structure? So you come in as an architect, or is it kind of come in and then you figure out like what design thing you want to go into? And
so I mean, I can speak for when I studied. So I graduated actually nine years ago. And I think a lot has changed, but at that point in Switzerland, the system is still the same. So you don't have to submit a portfolio, or you don't have to do any tests to get into the ETH itself or to enter a program, but you have to have a certain level of high school. And so I think at that point that was like 10% of the students would go and end up studying at a university, or they would do the rest would do an apprenticeship and then just end up in a profession, and could do eventually their studies along the way. So it's just a different model. And so to enter is really kind of straightforward. But then after a year, we had 12 exams. And so that was kind of hard. So it's a really in-depth general education, I think, the first year. So I had like mathematics, I had biology, even was one class, which is basically reading diagrams. I had art history, architecture history, theory, of course. So those were two different kind of classes. And then I had so they divided it into 3 different studio types, which is very different than here. So there's a studio type that is called design studio, which I think in most cases here in the US would be the first year design studio. So where you make you experiment with probably spatial conditions and proportion, and kind of learn the first for like the initial ways of how to represent things. So that was one day. And then the second day was basically a construction studio where you experimented with materials. So the first exercise was, for example, we got assigned a material and we had to make a chair. And that at that point was taught by Andrea de Plazis, and the design studio was taught by Marc Angelil, which I think first year course was fairly well known and also carried over here in some schools. And then we had one day where there was basically, it was more like an art class where you got assigned to do painting, drawing, perspectival hand drawing, and so on. So those were the three basically. And then the other 2 days you had 9 hours of lectures. So it was a pretty intense first year.
And so then how did it move on past that first year? Is it kind of like an AA system where you're kind of in a tract of architecture, or is it still pretty much kind of like a American?
It's pretty much American. So at that point you chose between 3 different studio professors, but they all had more or less the same requirements in terms of what the goal was of the studio and the criteria to pass it. I think it was not until year 3 where you actually, from then on, you can choose your professors, and you can also choose some extra classes that you want to choose. And so it depends a little bit what your interest is. I think there are a lot of electives that you can take. I think the big differences here or there is that you have mostly the studio professors mostly teach studio classes, but not a seminar. Not always, but most of the times. And then the people who are historians and so on, they just teach their one history class, and they're all very specific to what they teach mostly.
And then grad school, was that kind of a continuation of that, or did that get more specific?
For me, I have to say at that point it was specific, and it was a more continuation because I was basically the first track to do the bachelor master studio kind of study sequence. So I was the first one. It was fairly specific in that sense. You could go and select your own courses more or less pretty much completely. And so I don't know, they're not, at that point there was not a track like, let's say, the technology track or the urban design track or so, but you had to take once a studio that was about urban design. Everyone had to do that, so that there's a certain standard. I think I don't know how it is now, to be honest. It could have changed a little bit, but yeah, it's pretty continuation.
Who was there somebody that was really influential to you there, or a kind of a way of thinking?
Yes, absolutely. So my first year, like I mentioned, I was with Marc Angelil, and he became a really great mentor for me, and still is, I would say. He actually, he and Carrie Cyrus wrote the foreword for our book that is coming out.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we were really if it wouldn't have been if I wouldn't have had him, I think I would have experienced architecture in a very different way, and I'm still so thankful that I was lucky enough to have had him in first year. And I worked in his office for a while. I was a teaching assistant for his first year course for 2 years while I was studying. And so, so we go way back. So
isn't that so crazy? Like the effect that one person can have on your education. Like not only do you choose a university, but then it just happens that some person is there or something, and we all have those kind of things. And
yeah, absolutely.
And how we would be different.
Absolutely.
So that's interesting. You went to New York, what, after your first year or second year?
After my second year undergraduate.
Second year?
Yeah.
So did you feel your education and your background as different within the New York context? Like, or in what firm were you at? Like, did you feel your education like as unique compared to these other people, kind of?
Yes, I mean, I think so. I mean, I had a really great I ended up in a small office, or at that time relatively small, with Winkle Dupledam's office, architectonics, and strangely, I'm still friends with everyone there. So thinking about where everyone is now and who's doing what, I think that the difference was for me as an intern. Everyone always thought when you're coming from the ETH, you know how, or from Switzerland in general, you know how to draw details. So I did quite an extensive amount of drawing interior details. And I have to say, I didn't really have the experience, but just because I got to do that instead of building physical models, I really got into it, and it really helped me to figure things out by myself, you know. And so that was really fun. I guess there was always an interest also in an interior design track, not just like bigger buildings. So I like to think small and precise and in depth, rather than big with, you know, just like visions, but not thought through that much yet. So I think that was a really good education, and I really enjoyed working there. So I went actually back to Switzerland to my studies, and then decided to I lived with my parents for a long time, and so I just, because I was with the ETH, it was just nonstop. Like, it's architecture school, but it was just like I've never experienced something so extreme. So I would just go home for 5 hours to sleep, and that was from the first day of school till the very end I graduated. And so it was great because I could save some money to go with the teaching assistant position, to go during my vacation semester breaks. I would go to New York to work for Winca. And so that was really, really what kept me going, I think, you know, all these years.
Yeah, that's funny. And so so then after you graduated, you went back to New York again, like to stay for a little bit, or what was next?
No, actually, strangely, I didn't. I ended up immediately in a interior design firm, and worked a year long in like interior design. And I have to say that was really great for me because I learned a lot more detailing and about materials and things. So it was very hands-on, and yeah, it was really great. And then after that, I ended up in my other office I worked for during my graduate degree in Zurich, called OOS. And I actually worked there for 4 years, I think, and became an associate as well. So really fantastic people. I was always lucky. I always had really good experiences in offices, more or less, with people. So you know how I don't know. I always hear from my students that they don't have such great experiences because they, I don't know, or because architects are just difficult people, I think, sometimes, and their ego is really hard too. And I think it really it made a huge difference for me that I always ended up in offices where, you know, people were collegial. There was no hierarchy. You know, it was just a team, and so I really enjoyed that part as well. But at one point I just had I don't know what it was, but at one point I was like, oh, now I'm in Zurich, I'm an associate, I'm doing all of these projects, and I actually really enjoy it, but at the same time I feel like it's not my voice, or it's not 100% what I would do. Probably I can totally fully stand behind the work, it's beautiful work we're doing, but at the same time there has to be something more or different. And I thought of my time as I was still like invited for reviews, to go to reviews even while being in practice, because I met so many people working at the ETH as a teaching assistant that I ended up always going to the reviews. And then one day I was like, oh, I should go back to teaching. You know, I want to go back to teaching, and I ended up applying for fellowships, and that's, I think, how. So the idea was really just to do a gap year and just to say it's a sabbatical from my office in Switzerland. I'm still hired there, you know, but I do this other thing for a year and then I come back. And then I just like never went back again.
It's a long gap year.
Yeah.
So that was at the ETH where you started teaching? Or
yeah, that was yeah. And basically, so when I got back from New York from my first internship, I started teaching there while I studied. So yeah.
Was that a surprise? Like I'm like the first semester I taught, I was just kind of like, you're just going to let me teach these guys? Like, I don't have a teaching degree. I don't have, you know, it's like, it's a funny profession where you're taught by professionals in a way, right? It's like, you don't, like my my brother is like a music teacher, right? And he went to school to learn how to teach people, and he's a musician, but we're just architects. But so was it a steep learning curve, or was it you went right into it?
I mean, at the ETH, you always have lecturers as well that teach under a chair. So we had about 100 and I want to say close to 200 students or 150. And so we always were two people who taught 30 students. And so my responsibility depended on how much basically the person I was teaching with would trust me. And so I was really lucky because I had gone through the program 2 years before, same course. And I had all this other experience that year I was gone. And so I got a lot of experience teaching 15 students myself. And it was like basically the second year I would just do it almost myself because that person was traveling a lot I was teaching with. And so I basically got thrown into it and I just had to deal with it. And I think understanding or having gone through the classes that you're teaching, like that's something I still do when I teach. Like I always do the exercises or the assignments myself in order to understand how long they take. Does it make sense? Like, what do I really learn? So just because I had the experience that if I do it myself first, then I can teach it better. And I think that's a huge difference.
But so then how did you leave Switzerland? And what was that decision like?
Yeah, I don't know. I was in a point, I think, in my life where I was like, really, I felt like I'm very comfortable, and I always like to be in the situation where I didn't feel so comfortable because it would push me to be better, to get out of my comfort zone. And I think that was something that I didn't realize when I left Switzerland, but when I came to the US and I was suddenly teaching with a total different background with people I didn't know in a different language. It was Arizona, which was really gorgeous and different. At the same time, I really felt good about it because I could see it was not so predictable about what I would do next. And, I was comfortable enough to say, well, I just give it a try. And I mean, you only live once, worst comes to worst, I go back to Switzerland.
But where was it in Arizona? Like, it's not an obvious career path from Switzerland to Arizona.
No, it was actually Taliesin, the School of Architecture. And so they offered a 9-month fellowship. It was very different. I interviewed at other places too, but Taliesin was the one where I was hired, and I was really excited about it. I was very scared about going to Arizona first.
Yeah.
Now I feel like I'm in Texas, how scarier can it get? How much scarier can it get?
I'm scared of all of them.
Yeah, but I met these really incredible people, and it was great. I mean, we just went back a year ago actually to visit, so we really enjoyed being there.
So are you teaching in the building, in the Taliesin Frank Lloyd Wright building, or is it kind of a compound?
Yes. Well, no, it is there's the Frank Lloyd Wright basically drafting studio where we taught a class, and then there are some buildings where visitors don't have access to, where I taught the second semester studio. But yeah, it's all on campus, or it was all on campus, because they closed down the school, right? Or they are now, I think. In Arcosanti, I think.
Yeah. So what's it? So I'm looking at your LinkedIn here, scroll. So it seems like you get on this teaching circuit, right? And I'm always jealous, especially of you couples like you guys and all your teaching experiences and things. But so you're at Taliesin, and then you go to Florida, is that right? And then Syracuse?
No, U of A was the year after Taliesin, and that's in Tucson, University of Arizona.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and they offered me to teach a visiting critic studio and teach one core class studio second year. And I honestly just heard really good things about the program, and I have to say it's a good undergraduate program, I think, and super nice students and faculty. And I ended up going there because I wanted to experience teaching at a bigger program, because state schools are obviously very different than private schools. And I just thought it would be nice to teach my own studio again for a year. And yeah, and then I guess after that I went to Syracuse because Jonathan was there, was teaching there. And so I got the same position that he had. And we stayed for 3 years there because it was really luxurious to have a position like that and do our work and build up our work. So we owe Syracuse big time. We had a really great experience there.
Yeah. So when did you guys meet? I was like trying to put your LinkedIn together and like, where does it overlap? Where did they come together?
So originally we met when I was still, so like I said, I would still, being in practice in Switzerland, I would sometimes go to the US and do just a tour of reviews of people I met who invited me. And I would just take off my overtime and just do that. And so I ended up at Syracuse because the one now associate professor there, actually, Roger, he was Swiss, and I was teaching with him at the ETH as a teaching assistant. And however, he invited me for reviews, and I go there, and that was the first year that Jonathan taught. And so we got introduced at the dinner after, but he was on his way out, so we didn't really talk at all. We just got introduced. And then the year later, we were both at UPenn reviews, and ended up at the same review dinner, but we were at a different review. And he was very polite and said bye-bye to everyone personally. And I was, because I didn't know a lot of people, right? So I was like, oh, wait a minute, I think I know you. Are you in Syracuse? You have to say hi to my friends. And I don't know, that's how we connected on Facebook. And and I think that's how we kept in touch, I think, because I usually I used to write on Facebook when I would pass through New York to go to Switzerland, which is every half year. And I would just write, to not have to contact everyone. Now I'm different. I'm a little more personal. I reach out to the people, but I would just say, hey, I'm in New York these days. Let me know if anyone wants coffee or so. And so he actually reached out and said, hey, I'm in New York. Do you want to have coffee? And we had coffee, and we were talking about like being young and are in this limbo between, should we go full academia? Should we try an office? And I feel like we both felt the same way. I just got the position at U of A, and he was in Syracuse, and he was clearly more doing his things already, while I was primarily involved in a heavy teaching load. And so anyhow, we talked, and then somewhat 3 or 4 months later, he reaches out and says, hey, do you want to do a competition? And
that's a good architect pickup line. You want to do a competition?
And so we started doing the competition. So we really started to work together before we actually were together as a couple. And there's another story that he's probably happy to tell you. But we ended up like long distance working together, and there was someone in LA that wanted us to do something, and so it was literally in one night we had to come up with an office name, and so to look like decent, and actually that project went fairly far. I mean, it was never built, but it was a good project to start out with. The competition we lost, so that's not even to mention, but it was a good first experience working together.
So that's where architecture office came from. Like in 1 hour, it was like, hey, what are we? Oh, we're an architecture office.
Like a 5-minute thing. It was I mean, I think we always wanted to have a name, where you're not personally associated with, because we were always like, well, there are a lot of people involved in our work, right? And hopefully more so in the future. Hopefully we grow and can sustain the office, but it's not going to be just Jonathan, Louie, and Nicole McIntosh, And so we really wanted a name that was more general, where people feel like they can contribute to, and it's also theirs in a way.
Yeah, I love that name. I'm like, it wasn't taken. It's not. Yeah, it's it's like the
Yeah,
perfect like.
officially as an LLC, you can't do that, right? You have to say, I think it's a office. But yeah, I mean, we have a website that wasn't taken or any, like the domain wasn't taken or anything. So we just went for it. But you get a lot of jokes about it, of course. Now people are a little bit more serious, I think, but with us. But before that, it was really just, people were making fun of.
It's not the easiest to search for either if you just type in architecture office, right?
True.
It's nice. So see, is Jonathan around? Is he?
Yes, let me just check. I'm gonna switch. John?
So were you able to hear any of that?
Some of it, yes.
It's almost like a dating show, you know, like you get to see a story from your point of view and her point of view and see if it overlaps. But well, it's good, you know, it was fun getting to see your lecture this week and then talk to you. Like it's a nice little thing. But I always, you know, those introductions that they give in the beginning of those lectures, have you heard a good one? Like they always seem so difficult to do and so kind of mechanical, but yeah.
We've heard some good ones. We've heard some that were very personal in terms of you know, the things they've seen us do or and I think it's always nice when somebody gives gives over some time to talk about your work and think about your work.
What's it like to be lecturing on Zoom? Is it just like you're in an empty box and you're hoping people are there and
Basically, yeah. Well, the nice thing is that you don't have to worry about reminding yourself to look up at the audience.
Yeah, cool. So okay, so I found out the other day, so you're from Hawaii, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So like born and raised and
born and raised, high school in Seattle on Mercer Island, and that's
which island did you grow up in, or where were you? Oahu. Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in Honolulu, near to Waikiki and Diamond Head, in a little area called Kaimaki.
What'd your parents do? What were you kind of surrounded by growing up?
My mom is a therapist, and she still is.
It's good as an architect to have a mom as a therapist.
Yeah. And my dad is an architect.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So what kind of work was he doing there?
My dad was doing, I think, some residential and commercial work. But he had an office and it was, about 5 to 10 people large. I do know that he was doing some work at the Polynesian Cultural Center, which is like, how should I put it, like a more authentic version of Disneyland, but it actually has a really, really incredible kind of infrastructure behind it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So were you like always in the office and always surrounded by it, or were you able to kind of keep some distance from architecture?
So I was sometimes in the office. Yeah. I remember like stapling and stamping blueprints that I probably shouldn't have been doing it like that.
With those like fumes of the old blueprints, like with the chemicals and stuff. Yeah. So was he of the mind? You know, I've get a lot of like children of architects on here, you know, and it's like it seems like you go one of two ways where you're like, I don't want my children to be architects, or it's like, no, let's really raise them up the right way, right? What boat was he in? So then you went to Seattle for high school? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how did that come about?
We just, private school in Hawaii is just too expensive. And so it was like an economic decision, and it was actually a very good economic decision. now that we know how much real estate is worth in Seattle. And so we ended up moving there because they have a good public school system. Because otherwise in Hawaii, a lot of kids are in a private school system, and so it was just not cost efficient to spend so much money in private school.
But your whole family moved, or just you went?
No, just our family.
Oh, yeah. Wow, yeah, okay. And so, what is Syracuse like? Right, I mean, it's pretty isolated, right? Like geographically, and so it seems like in places like that, there's not much else to do but really bunker down in studio, right? I went to one of those places. Yeah, you transfer in, and is it just an architecture track right away, or is it kind of a group that then you split off?
Oh yeah, no, it's all architecture all the time, and there was something really amazing about it. I think that's probably a similar experience to Nicole, where we were just kind of fully immersed in architecture. And Syracuse, you're right, Syracuse is 4 hours away from New York City, at least, and the weather is. They don't shut down the school unless it's there's like 3 feet of snow on the ground, which rarely happens. And so you're just there and you're just working, and it's a really incredible environment because of that. The faculty there have been together for quite some time, and they've really kind of they work together on the curriculum, which I think was something that really helps somebody such as myself who didn't have such a kind of strong upbringing in the way of thinking about architecture that they were thinking about, or even the arts in a kind of in that way, but because you're fully immersed around all of these people, it's a really nice experience. I have to imagine it's the same at places like Cornell or Rice or et cetera, et cetera. They've got a brand and their curriculum, and everybody gets immersed into it and works together to kind of figure it out and get it done.
So who were some of those people that were most kind of influential to you there at undergrad?
Oh gosh. Well, the professor who actually recently retired, Randall Corman, was the one who actually I studied with when I was in Florence. And that was one of those kind of moments where it was a kind of like, oh, so this is what I'm looking at. There are some that are still there that are influential as well. Mark Linder is one of them. He is a theorist, and you could also say there are a number of kind of recently retired individuals as well that were influential to me when I was there.
And then what'd you do when you graduated? What was next?
Went to work in Boston. Met a number of really incredible young offices, and I think a lot of those young offices set the blueprint for Nicole and I, at least trying to understand what it means to get something done, how to operate professionally, with a very small budget, how to move from one project to the next. It was really, really nice. And I had short stints with them, never more than about six months. But still to this day, I really admire their work.
Who are some of those firms?
So Single Speed Architects. So John and Ginny. I think John's now in South Korea and Ginny's now in New York. And then there's of course Studio Lutz, which is Hansi and Anthony, that were really they because also it was the economic downturn in 2008. So like the fact that they were willing to take somebody on that they've never had as a student meant a lot. But then after that, I went to Holland and I worked at a Dutch office for a couple of years. It was kind of like trying to outrun the run the economic downturn as best as possible, but gain architectural experience. And so I had a really nice time there. I worked at MBRDB, and what was really nice about it is that at that time there was still a 40 to 60 person office and a very horizontal structure, and we hung out together. We had lunch together. We worked hard together late into the night, and so it was really a collegial atmosphere. And really owe a lot to that office.
Yeah, so you were in the Rotterdam office, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when were you there?
Around 2008 to 2010.
Okay. Yeah. So I worked in Rotterdam I just missed you in 2011 and 12. Yeah. But it's such a amazing kind of scene and culture around that, right? Like all these offices, and you kind of intermingle, and just the city itself of like such like an architectural windswept playground, right? Like huge public open spaces and like strong buildings that rains all the time, and yeah. So who were you kind of partnered up with? Which partner in RED? Like, were you kind of in one of the groups there?
A lot of the time I was jumping from competition to competition, and so it would be like 4-week long competition, and myself and one project leader, we got along really well. So they would always just kind of jump us from competition to competition, and so it would change. I think some of the more urban projects would be with Winnie Moss, and then some of the they're not small. They're still large projects would be with Jacob von Ries, and sometimes would be with Natalie Degree.
So that came to it. You did that for about 2 years, and then what was next?
Came back, went to Los Angeles, worked a little bit as a project leader for Fernando Romero's office.
Oh yeah, huh.
In LA, and then ended up going to graduate school at UCLA, where I met Neil Dodari, and Neil has been and is still an incredible mentor who always finds a way to get right to the point. And get to the heart of the matter, even if you haven't seen him for a couple of years, and it's really nice. I also, while I was there, I met a lot of really influential friends, and 3 of them, we did a project together called On the Road Project LA, which was a kind of collaborative curatorial project that used the different urban types around the city as the kind of point of departure for the display of art and architectural work from younger generations. And so I think that friendship still lasts to this day, and we're constantly in conversation about many different things. And so that's been really nice.
And so is this about when Nicole came into the picture?
Nicole came into the picture right after graduate school, when I was at Syracuse. So she was, I think, my first year teaching there.
And so okay, so stepping back a bit, so you had all these kind of professional experiences. You went to UCLA, which is a pretty specific kind of school or way of learning, I think, and kind of environment. And then you graduate, and it is a decision right away that you want to go towards academia, or did you kind of fall into that?
I think I mean, I don't know. It just happened. I'm not quite sure how it worked. honestly. I taught after graduating from UCLA, I taught her. I was lucky enough to teach us as part of a summer lecturer for high school students at UCLA's Jumpstart program. So I probably owe a lot of thanks to the individual who hired me for that, which was Georgina Holchek, because I applied to be a teaching assistant, not as the studio teacher. And a lot of things were happening all at once, and I think Michael Speaks was becoming dean at Syracuse, and Michael and Neil go way back, and so Neil has never said anything to me, so but yeah, I ended up teaching at Syracuse, and very, very happy to have spent that time there.
And then Nicole comes in with your architecture competition pickup line. Yeah. She said you had a good story about how you met or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it was just also something that like could only happen in an internet age, right? Like where you're like flying around, or like as young professors, where you're kind of flying around and you're like excited to go on reviews, and you're willing to go kind of like to wherever it is and be totally inconvenienced and to sit on a review for 4 or 5 hours and talk about architecture.
Yeah, that's funny. And so so you guys came together, and we're both teaching at Syracuse at that point, and like the idea of an office was pretty strong. So you had the competition in the beginning, and then what was kind of the next steps to that, to the office in general?
Gosh, we did a house that never got built. That was House and House, and I think I showed that in the lecture. I think the league prize.
Oh, really?
Yeah. After that, I think it was the league prize. 2017. I think it was 2017.
Okay, so the league prize. So that was about support, right? Was that? And so what was the kind of approach you guys took with that, and how do you win it? Let me know. I'm gonna take notes.
So I think the statement matters a lot. I don't know how they do the how they do it now, but before you got like 300 words to write a statement or something short. And
I think you need a voice, right? Whatever that voice is. And I think the brief is usually fairly open so that anyone could be included, or you can, I don't know, I think you can make it work. However, like our interest at that point was like the background or this idea of images and how images influence the way basically instead of the president, the traditional president project in architecture, which is a building that you're looking at, we were interested in how our students, but also us, how we are influenced by image circulation these days, and the image dissemination, because how often do you have a student that comes to you with a picture, right? To be more specific, not just an image. Usually it's a photograph of something and tells you what they think about what this is, but usually it's not what they think it is, just usually because the person who made the project or who's looking at it. And so we were really interested in that, I think. And there's, going back to that, I think there's also a little bit of a tradition or like in Switzerland where images play a role as well, in terms of context. And so instead of the built environment, seeing images as the context. And I think we all do that, right? That's not something new. I think it's, if you have an office, if you work on a project, you probably look at a specific detail, right, of another building, and then you're like, oh, it looks like this, so let me, and so that was a little bit our approach, I think. And I guess also in a way like how original or how like your project really is in that regard. But we our portfolio was based on each project had an image collection of images that we thought were influential for the project along the way. And I think that was in the viewfinders presented at that exhibition. And so that like at that point it was really, I think we had to lecture the first time together for the Lake Prize lecture. It was the worst experience we had in architecture, if you would ask us. And we say that out loud, it's okay. Jonathan has heard that before, I heard that before. It was really, really hard because we worked together for like 1.5 years maybe, or 2 years at that point, you know, and then distant too. So the lecturing together really was I think that was the real start of The Office, because that was when we really had to take a position. You know?
And we're really forced to agree on things.
Yeah, and so we were excited about that in a way in the long run, but that was really hard for us at the beginning.
Because I think that's really interesting, this idea of your voice, right, and of kind of your project, your architectural project, and trying to discover it for one person is difficult, but two, you know, it's even more, I'd say, and like in this academic setting of like where you're trying to find this little kind of thread. I think I forgot what you'd said, Jonathan, but you know, where you're like picking at something, right, and find that thing to pick at and hope it goes deep enough, or you're able to take it deep enough to make it into something, and then hope you like where it takes you, I guess. But so was that this idea of kind of image that led into Swissness applied, or was that the kind of next step?
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, I don't know, like, yes, I would say yes. I mean, but when you think of the League Prize, that was definitely, I think if that wouldn't have happened with the project being there already, but more as a written project, not as a fully flushed out physical project, it was part of our package, but we've only done like 2 models or so as test models for the seminar that we would be teaching, or I would be teaching, and so it was really in the very beginning of the research and what could come out of it. But yeah, it was one of the 4 projects we exhibited, and also we talked about, which is great because we got a lot of feedback as well, and for some reason it was also great because it was really received well, because you know the topic itself is very much rejected by architects. Like anything we do is always pretty much something that you as an architect would first reject and not even look at, right? So for the Syracuse space, for example, for the co-work space we were looking at cubicles, which, you know, you think of these very repetitive boxes, and something that was dismissed at one point, or I don't know, they were, but we were just really interested in that. And so I think that's also maybe something that kind of came out later, that we're more and more interested maybe in things that are dismissed, or that not everyone would look at.
Yeah, but I think also, Adam, you're asking about like, did we know what we had at the time? And I don't think we did. I think it's really just we wrote this thing for the portfolio, and it sounded good, and we made a portfolio that collected our work, and we found a way. We thought a lot about kind of what went into the portfolio, but we didn't spend a lot of time making the portfolio itself in terms of crafting it.
That's actually not true. I totally disagree with you.
Okay, well,
he didn't really, like, he wanted to submit a long time ago, and like that's always the thing. Like I just like, we're kind of done, but then we're not. And so
no, but for example, like we sent it to the printers. We didn't have a binding. Like literally, the printer comes back with cardboard on either side to protect the paper, and they cut the cardboard at the exact size of the paper, because to make sure that the corners don't dig. And so like we didn't do anything other than just like binder clip the cardboard to the paper, and then like tape like something on the top of it, which is like the title, and that was it. Like we didn't try to like sew anything or make a special binding. It was just all stuff that was.
And I mean, it was in terms of layout, we did an extensive amount of work in order to communicate what we think was what we were doing. And I think we only did that because we learned so much, through that. I think even now we apply to a lot of things like everyone does. And I think we always continue to do that no matter if you win something or not, because it just helps you to grow. And I think that at that point, that portfolio did so much for our work because we really had to think about it. And I don't know, I mean, I also think that we're usually doing less maybe, but we're always trying to do it well or as good as we can. And that just means that we can't do, hundreds of things, but we do one thing and I don't know, we try to do it well.
Yeah.
Not to say that we get, rejections all the time for things we're doing, but we try to.
Right. But I think it's interesting, like that idea of extreme rigor in specific things that then manifests itself in something else. Like when I was watching the presentation and you were doing that presentation on cubicles, I was like, why the hell are they going this deep into cubicles for this like 3,000 whatever 1,500 square foot office? And it's like, that's so impressive or so crazy to be thinking about, but it's like it's this study that happened before that then kind of rolls into different things, right? I guess, yeah. And it's like the same thing with like Swissness, and it seemed to have the different stages, right? The paper models were kind of representations of full buildings to these kind of wooden detail models, right? Zooming in to kind of like created schemes, like kind of combined together, right? Do you know where it goes next? I guess I don't know. I asked Jonathan like kind of a bad question the other night, but of just like, does it get in your blood? Like drawing all those things over and over, like did it had to have kind of changed you, right? Or like affected you? Like each of these things that you do affects you, right? The cubicle study or this idea of viewfinders where you're kind of focusing in on something, or this idea of like these kind of kitsch details or like these fake details, right? It all builds up inside of you. Do you choose to do something with it or kind of move to the next thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think we like to play things out to maybe a little too extensive sometimes, but I don't know. It's also hard to. I mean, in a way, it's hard to say what comes next because we have things going now, and we just try to focus on these things, without thinking too much ahead, to be honest. I mean, there's the Seoul biennial installation we're doing now, which takes an extended amount of time. We're working together with Arab on that, which is fantastic, where we learn a lot. I mean, the Swissness Applied exhibition is going further. Probably will be exhibited more in more locations in the US. We're very excited we get to exhibit it in, of course, Denver at the UC Denver.
Eventually, yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, we're excited about that. And it will go to Switzerland again. And so and then of course there's the book, which we're also very excited about, which we're happy to have like something that is lasting, because the Swissness Applied exhibition was very laborious and kind of every time we go there, we install it, we have to find if we are not doing it at a school, we have to find grants and people who support the project. And so I think that the Swissness Applied exhibition probably will travel around again with the book, but after that, I think we just probably call it and then do something else. I mean, I don't know. We had a few clients here that were interested in doing things, and it's hard with for everyone right now with the pandemic, and so I think luckily we were still very busy, so we don't feel like and we're happy to not take on too much, do the things right we're doing, and so hopefully after that I think our desire would be to do another project with a client on a larger scale. That would be definitely something I think we would love to do.
Yeah, but I think also like it's just you're asking also the kind of $1 million question that we don't even know too. Like how do you what's next, right? Or like what's how does this impact your practice? If it was research and as a kind of academic or having a critical practice, like how is the research impacting the way you're designing or the things that you make? And I think those are things we have to just kind of simmer about a little bit, and maybe there's an opportunity coming soon that we find that allows us to kind of like work on it.
Yeah. And what are you guys doing in Texas right now? You're at Texas A&M, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what are you kind of teaching or what's the scene like down there?
We don't know it very well because like we've only been here just a year or so, and so yeah, but 1 year with COVID, and so we're not dealing with a whole lot of people this past year. And the year before that, when we got here, we were just traveling so much with the exhibition and symposiums and gallery talks, so that we never really kind of like figured out what was going on here before COVID happened. So it's really hard to say like what we're doing here. I mean, we're teaching our studios and our classes. I think Nicole teaches a PhD seminar, but other than that, like it's hard to kind of for us to be able to kind of reflect on this place.
Yeah, it's been definitely different. I mean, for several reasons, but yeah, teaching studios, and I don't know. I teach an image theory seminar right now, which is also like a little bit pushing me to my limits. But it's I mean, it's interesting for what it is. I mean, I think we would have wished to be able to be a little bit more involved or understand the culture better, but at the same time, I think we're also happy that we can work remotely and be able to focus on the book right now, which is also challenging and also putting us on to our limits, I think, because we've never wrote a book. So
tell me what the book is about. What's the elevator pitch of it?
So, well, the title is Swiss Applied: Learning from Nuglaris. And it's basically a more in-depth research on Nuglaris. It will include the work of the exhibition, but it will also include like the Swissfication periods of Nuglaris. It will include several guest essays by Whitney Moon, Kurt Forster, Courtney Kaufman, Jesus Basalo, Philip Orsprung. So we're not the only ones who are writing, which I think is a good thing. It opens up the perspective a little bit beyond just so this idea of Swissness, what it means in the context of America and so on. So we're excited about that. There are a lot of more drawings that were part of our field work that will be published in there as well. And it's exciting that it's published with a Swiss publisher.
Park Books.
Yeah. So that's great.
Yeah, we have a foreword with Mark Angelo, Carrie Cyrus, and we have an interview with Patrick Roberts. Yeah. And what's cool about it is that some of these people we've met, most of them we've met along the way with as the project has been ongoing, and so or gotten to know them better on a different level as the project has been going. So. Whether they've participated in a gallery talk with us, like at Yale, Kurt Forster did a gallery talk with us, which was kind of
really great because we didn't know him before, and it was really it was incredible. I mean, they're like I think I mentioned Mark. Mark was I know him for forever, and he's my mentor. But there are a lot of people we met along the way of the exhibition, and yeah, it's really great. It's been a really fun few years because of it. I mean, there's definitely something. I mean, besides the grant writings, which was very there was a lot of pressure, to move the whole exhibition to Switzerland and back. But I think besides that, it was really great who we met, and also how nice it is for me, but also for Jonathan to be in a way connected back to Switzerland. So that was definitely also, we got to lecture at EPFL in Switzerland and yeah, I mean, at other schools. And so it's nice. It's really nice. Brought us a lot of joy.
Nice. Well, it was fun. It was fun, trying to get this exhibition and to see you with you guys and kind of working with you a little bit and getting to be introduced to your work and just it was nicely inspiring. My wife's also an architect, and so like we have that same. I'm always interested to talk to couples because it's like, how do you guys work together? And because we had a firm together, and then we kind of like went off, but we're always kind of doing stuff, and it's still. We've been married for 11 years, and it's like we just got into a heated discussion last night about some programming boxes, but it's always interesting of how people kind of come together in the highs and the lows of that, and just the criticality of your work and of your firm. It's inspiring of that kind of razor's edge that you have to kind of try to tread of academia and professional but trying to create work that's meaningful and still eat somehow. But I appreciate your work. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you. And thanks again for having us. I mean, it was really fun talking to you finally.
Yeah.
Just your email. So.
I know, exactly.
Thank you for listening to this week's show.
You can visit architecting.com, that's architect-ing.com, to see images from this week's guest.
And please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.
Have a great week and keep connecting.
Oh yeah, when we found out, she who was it? Anne Riesebach tried to. What did she try to email us first? No, she tried to call us.
She tried to call both of us individually.
She tried to call us both individually, and we both times there was a number that we didn't recognize, so we just kind of like turned it off. And then I think eventually she wrote a very quick email to us like, hey, like this is so and so. I want to speak to you. To us, and then so I think eventually she got a chance to talk to Nicole, and in Switzerland they don't know what the lead price is, or like it's known, but it's not like as Nicole didn't grow up thinking about the lead price. So like Nicole was of course excited, but also she was like trying to play it cool
well, also there's so many prices here in the US,
Yeah.
I mean, I have a huge disadvantage when I apply, when I mean, now it doesn't matter anymore, but when I used to apply for jobs, like it was so bad because I didn't get any prize when I went to school for anything really. And here you have so many, scholarships, and I was like, okay.
You can really pack that resume. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's interesting. I'm in a weird spot where like that question of kind of what's the voice or what's the direction, like my wife and I started a firm in 2009 when right out of school, and like got projects in like Wichita, Kansas, and we're living there and like doing stuff. And then we both went to grad school, and then we're like working for other people, and I'm doing it on and off. I'm always struggling with this idea of kind of what's the project and what's the importance of it, I guess, in a way, and so it's like, I feel like, the league prize, it's like, I need a better idea of voice, but it's like you're saying, like, I was talking to Kevin Hirth a lot when he was applying, and it's like, he got it on his second or third time, right? And like seeing the evolution of his application was pretty interesting of how he was kind of thinking about his work and moving forward. But
Kevin spent a lot of time putting his portfolio together. Remember he came up to us after? He apparently saw a portfolio. It was like, how much time did you spend putting your portfolio together? So he went with us, obviously. And so we had to give these interviews with them. And so, again, we had no idea what to say. But anyways, so after one another, the people were interviewed, and they had your portfolio in front of them so that they could ask you questions. And Kevin saw our portfolio lying there, and there were no, like, we did these like
what was it, binder clippers. And apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently at that point they requested to have the portfolio bound in a proper way. And Kevin is still joking around about it. He's like, "Why did you guys win? You didn't even follow the requirements." Blah, 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 blah. It's like really funny.
I think Kevin almost killed himself on that, on the submittal, at least, like that drawing that he did and the models, like he was working night and day of those, and he had like interns and barely got it in on time. And, his whole process was just like making little tick hatch marks and hours.
It's so great. I mean, we told this to Kevin too. It's so great for us too that he did that, because in every photo, his wall is in the back, and we're like, yes.
Yeah.
Our information looks so much better with this work.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, cool, guys. Well, yeah, nice talking in person, and thanks.
Yeah, you too. Nice.
Hope to meet an actual person sometime.
Yeah, we hope we can come to Denver eventually, right? I mean, that's the plan, but we see how it goes.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, just kind of our experiences with Colorado and the University of Colorado has been great, even though we haven't had a chance to go there. Everybody's so nice.
Yeah, it's true.